Keystone XL and Dakota Access oil pipelines. The oil industry and its supporters are cheering the move. Opponents, environmentalists, Native Americans, landowners, many of whom fought to block construction of the pipelines, say they will continue to fight. We're going to look at that in this segment of the show. You can join us on air or online, where this conversation is always on. How are you reacting to the news of President Trump's moves on pipelines? We're at 800-423-8255, 800-423-TALK. Here he was yesterday signing an executive action meant to speed approvals on Keystone XL and Dakota Access pipelines. Here's sound from a video of him signing those actions.
This is with regard to the construction of the Keystone Pipeline, something that's been in dispute, and it's subject to a renegotiation of terms by us. We're going to renegotiate some of the terms, and if they'd like, we'll see if we can get that pipeline built. A lot of jobs, 28,000 jobs, great construction jobs.
The president yesterday, of course, we have to do the fact check here. The State Department says 16,000 jobs, not 28,000, and says 3,900 construction jobs, not 28,000. But there he was signing. Reaction, pretty swift here. This was Seattle. Demonstrators already out yesterday, beating drums, chanting in protest over the move. Join us. Are you amazed? These pipelines are back on the table. Are you cheering? Are you appalled? Will all the protests be back? And what's the impact here if they're built? If they're not, we're at 800-423-8255, 800-423-TALK. Joining me now from Los Angeles is Linda Mapes, reporter for the Seattle Times, who spent a lot of time on pipeline issues. Linda Mapes, welcome back to On Point.
Hi, Tom.
And with us from Washington is Michael Brune, Executive Director of the Sierra Club, the country's largest grassroots environmentalist organization. Mike Brune, welcome to On Point. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Tom. Thanks for having me on.
Linda, first to you. Exactly what happened yesterday with the strokes of the pen? What does it mean exactly? Is it a done deal, or it just opens the way, or it speeds it? What happened, Linda?
You know, the important thing to recognize here is what didn't happen. You can't do government by Twitter. There are still 3 branches of government, and what happened yesterday is yet to be seen.
Yeah, but this wasn't a tweet. He was signing something there. He wasn't just writing a tweet.
Very true, and what he did sign was not a directive and not a fiat. What it was a memorandum to the Corps of Engineers that says you can do one of 3 things. You can expedite the review that's already underway. You can look at rescinding the order that came out in December under the previous administration calling for the environmental impact review that is now underway. Or you can, just go ahead and issue that easement that's needed for the company to get cracking.
And you're just talking Dakota Access here, is that right, Linda?
I'm talking Dakota Access, and the thing about what happened yesterday is, it means nothing and everything. I mean, the Corps of Engineers can carry on just as they were with their review, or they can go ahead and issue the easement that's needed to finish the very last bit of that pipeline. It's completely built except for the last 1,000 feet drilling under the river, and there are crews standing by in hotel rooms to get going as soon as they get a green light, if they get it.
With this presidential move, how soon could that green light hypothetically come?
Golly, I mean, it could come today if they want to, and at that point, what would happen next, of course, is the Standing Rock Sioux tribe is also standing by with its lawsuit to block construction, and, then it would be up to the courts. Would they intervene quickly? Would they intervene too slowly for it to effectively matter on the ground? This job takes about 2 weeks to complete if you work 24-hour shifts. But let's remember this, even if the pipeline is completed, a court can still intervene to stop the flow of oil. So even if the pipeline is completed, the battle still isn't over.
1,000 feet to complete, that's not much. We'll come back and look at the Dakota Access Pipeline. Michael Brune, help us think about the Keystone XL pipeline. There was also enormous pushback on this, and of course push for it as well. It was put off the table by the Obama administration. What exactly happened in relation to the Keystone XL pipeline yesterday under the pen of Donald Trump? Michael Brune.
Okay, so again, the Keystone XL pipeline, for those who need a refresher, this is a pipeline that would take oil, some of the dirtiest oil on the planet, from the tar sands in Canada all the way down into the U.S., basically transporting it all the way through our country down to the Gulf, where much of it would be exported. This is oil that is very toxic, very flammable, very carbon intensive, so it's a potent accelerant in terms of making climate change much worse. The status of Keystone is much different from Dakota Access in that this 1,000-mile segment hasn't been built, hasn't been approved. None of it has been built except for a southern portion that was approved several years ago. But this 1,000-mile segment doesn't exist. And in fact, when it goes to Nebraska, there's not even any proposed route right now. So there's not that much that the president can do in the very short term to approve this, to make this pipeline a reality. But there is what his action yesterday indicated, a willingness to put this back on the table, to get into conflict with a lot of ranchers and farmers who don't want a pipeline going through their property, and of course putting him in and his administration in conflict with climate science, because we can't take dirty oil out of the ground and burn it at the rates that we've been doing.
I've got that as your view there. The Sierra Club absolutely have that, and of course there's a lot of consensus about climate change concern here, but strictly in government power terms, I don't want to obfuscate. I mean, if the president says it's back on the table, is it back on the table?
Yeah, well, the president has ultimate authority on whether or not this pipeline can be approved.
And that's what yesterday he has revived.
He has, yes, so to get very specific, he has indicated a willingness to have this pipeline be built. That is different from approving a pipeline,
right?
Which has not happened yet because there's no proposal, there's no specific route that has been outlined that would allow the president to approve it.
Yeah, but of course the first thing is just the sign-off, and then yes, of course it could have lots of bumps in the road, but that sign-off is what they didn't get before, and he's saying now, well, let's reconsider that, and indicating he said on the campaign trail he wants it.
This is true.
And here we are. Linda Mapes, can you picture, I don't know, a couple of years from now, by the end of a 4-year term, that both of these pipelines would be underway or up and running?
You know, I think you raise a good question, because remember, these projects happen in a market. They don't happen in a bubble or some kind of dreamland. And there's another pipeline we need to talk about. That's the Trans Mountain, just approved by the Canadian Labour government. You know, that's a gigantic pipeline again, tar sands oil, all the way from Alberta to the Pacific and into Metro Vancouver. And, you know, do we really need all these pipelines? Would oil prices today even support these activities? You know, you begin to ask yourself if the market would even support this, let alone the people of the United States and in the communities and among the First Nations and tribes that would, you know, no doubt rise up against this. I mean, the First Nations in BC have already said, sure, you know, you've approved it, but you're never going to build it, and they're already organizing massive disobedience. So I think there's a real market question here. There's a price question. There's a glut question, and there's a very real question about opposition to this on the ground. It's going to be very serious. I mean, honestly, I'm quite worried about what will happen in North Dakota if the drill bit starts to turn.
But let me ask you about that Trans Mountain pipeline, because that's interesting here. Is that what Canada turned to after the Keystone XL was blocked, so they take the tar sands oil, and instead of sending it down through the United States, they'd send it over the Rockies and send it, off toward China?
Yeah, off toward China, and interestingly, I'm in Los Angeles because they also send it to California in communities down here in Los Angeles who are trying to revive their river and trying to bring back some of these communities that have already been hammered by industrialization and pollution. They don't want it. They don't want an even deeper commitment to fossil fuels, even more oil, you know, being moved through their communities. And so that Canadian pipeline is directly connected to the communities down here in Los Angeles. So from First Nations communities in BC to Washington State tribes and communities in the San Juan Islands who are very concerned about 7 times increase in the oil tanker traffic through the Salish Sea, all the way down here to Metro Los Angeles. There's a lot of opposition to that pipeline.
Of course, there's a big push for these pipelines too. Canada wants to see the Keystone XL. Oil companies want the Dakota Access Pipeline. Here's an interview with Prairie Public Broadcasting yesterday. Ron Ness with North Dakota Petroleum Council said that pipeline construction, he said, is long overdue.
This pipeline should be moving oil today, and we'd have 2,000 or 3,000 less trucks on the road in western North Dakota. We'd be getting our oil to market, to a better market, more safely and more reliably, and we'd be getting a better price for it.
But there are definitely protesters standing by, ready to try and stop it. Talking with Amy Sisk of Prairie Public Broadcasting again yesterday, Gina Neal, she's still at that campsite around the Dakota Access Pipeline, said she knew that President Trump would try to push the pipeline forward.
To me, it's not surprising. We were kind of knew that was going to happen. To me, this is just such a serious issue that I'm not packing up to go home. I'm going to stay.
She's going to stay. It will be very interesting to see what happens on that site if the bulldozers fire up again.